Did you know about the incredible story of Elijah, a prophet who stood boldly for his faith in a time of great uncertainty? Let me take you back to a world of dust-covered roads, stone altars, and unwavering faith in the face of danger. The story starts during the reign of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel in Israel, a time like no other. Ahab had done more to anger God than all the kings before him, leading the people astray to worship Baal, a pagan god. Idolatry was rampant, and the land was gripped in spiritual darkness. Enter Elijah, a man whose very name means, "My God is Yahweh." He emerged seemingly out of nowhere, ready to proclaim God's truth in the midst of chaos. Elijah wasn't a man from a wealthy background or a royal family. He was a common man from Tishbe, a town shrouded in mystery. But God chose him. Imagine the boldness it would take to walk into the king's court uninvited, standing before the most powerful man and his equally intimidating queen. With unwavering faith, Elijah declared, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." A drought. Can you imagine? Such a declaration against Baal, the so-called god of fertility and rain, was a direct challenge to the false beliefs of the time. And true to his word, the heavens closed. For 3.5 years, the skies yielded no rain. Crops failed, herds dwindled, and thirst gripped the nation. Yet Elijah trusted God in the midst of famine. God instructed Elijah to flee to the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. Here the Lord provided for him in miraculous ways. Ravens delivered bread and meat to him twice a day, and he drank from the brook. Ravens, unclean birds under Jewish law, became heavenly messengers of provision. Have you ever stopped to think about how unconventional God's methods can be? Even in the wilderness, Elijah experienced God's provision firsthand. When the brook eventually dried up, God directed Elijah to the town of Zarephath, where a widow and her son lived on the brink of death due to the drought. Upon meeting them, Elijah asked for a piece of bread. The widow hesitated, explaining that she only had a handful of flour and a little oil left, barely enough for one last meal before she and her son perished. Elijah reassured her, saying, "Don't be afraid. First, make a small loaf for me, and then prepare something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain." Miraculously, it happened just as Elijah said. God sustained them through the famine. Everything seemed to culminate at Mount Carmel, where Elijah revealed God's power in an unforgettable way. King Ahab blames Elijah for the nation's troubles when they meet again, calling him the troubler of Israel. But Elijah turned the accusation back on the king, pointing out the true cause of Israel's woes, their idolatry. Elijah proposed a dramatic challenge to prove who the real God is. He called for 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah to gather at Mount Carmel with all of Israel. Elijah set up a contest, 2 altars, 2 bulls, and a test of divine power. The prophets of Baal were given the first turn. From morning until noon, they danced and shouted, crying out to their God, saying, "Baal, answer us." But there was no response. Elijah couldn't help but mock them, saying, "Shout louder. Maybe he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." They shouted louder, slashed themselves with swords and spears until their blood flowed, but still, nothing. Then it was Elijah's turn. Picture this. He invites the people closer and repairs the altar of the Lord that had been torn down. Using 12 stones, 1 for each tribe of Israel, he rebuilt the sacred place. He dug a trench around it and placed the bull on it. Then, in an unimaginable move, He ordered water to be poured all over the offering and the wood, 3 times until the trench filled. Everything was soaked. He then prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." And then it happened. Fire from the Lord fell and consumed not only the offering, but also the wood, stones, soil, and even the water in the trench. The people fell on their faces, declaring, "The Lord, He is God." Elijah seized the moment, rounding up the false prophets for judgment, and the nation's heart was turned back to God. Soon after, rain returned to the parched land as Elijah prayed earnestly on Mount Carmel, further demonstrating God's power over nature. But like all human stories, Elijah's tale isn't without its struggles. After such a public victory, Elijah faced personal despair. Jezebel, furious over the death of her prophets, swore to kill him. Elijah fled into the wilderness, overwhelmed and ready to give up. Yet even in his lowest moment, God met him. An angel touched him, supplying bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water, saying, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." Strengthened by the meal, Elijah traveled 40 days and nights to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. There, in the cleft of a mountain, Elijah encountered something profound. A powerful wind tore through, but the Lord wasn't in the wind. Then an earthquake shook the ground, but the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. Fire followed, but again, the Lord wasn't in the fire. Finally came a gentle whisper, and it was there Elijah heard God's voice, a reminder that His power and presence often come through quiet, intimate encounters rather than grand displays. From the confrontation with idolatry to the gentle whisper on Mount Horeb, Elijah's life reveals a story of fire and faith, struggle and restoration. His unwavering trust in God reminds us of the power of faith in overcoming chaos. What stands out to you about Elijah's story? His boldness, God's miraculous provision, or perhaps the way God pursues us even in our moments of despair? If you've found encouragement in Elijah's journey, make sure to share this story with someone who might need a reminder of God's faithfulness today. Bible, more Jesus, #God, #Jews, #Christian, /Christianity, /faith.